Captain Elias Mercer stood at the large window of the Earth Space Union starship, Harmony 1, staring at the glowing blue planet below. Zalvona, a neutral world in the center of the galaxy, looked peaceful from space. But Elias knew better. Peace was fragile here. The Earth Space Union had sent him on a diplomatic mission to help maintain peace between humans and the Kailari, a proud, ancient alien race known for their strict traditions and sharp intelligence. Humans were still new in the galactic community. Most species saw them as unpredictable, but some saw potential, and that included the Kailari. As Elias prepared to step into the docking bay, his second-in-command, Lieutenant Harper, walked beside him. "Nervous?" she asked, smiling. "Just focused," Elias replied, adjusting his formal jacket. "This isn't just another meeting. This could shape the future." They entered the shuttle and descended toward the planet. Zalvona's capital, Luran's Reach, was built into cliffs of silver stone. Towers sparkled like crystals under the sunlight. It was beautiful but cold, just like the Kailari. At the main landing platform, Elias was greeted by a group of Kailari officials. They stood tall, with smooth, pale blue skin and golden eyes that watched everything closely. They wore robes marked with symbols of rank and family. Among them stood Ambassador Varel. She was graceful and quiet. Her presence seemed to command silence. Unlike others, she didn't look away when Elias approached. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "I am Captain Elias Mercer of Earth," he said, offering a respectful nod. "I am Ambassador Varel of House Saran," she replied, her voice calm and clear. "Welcome to Zalvona." There was no handshake. Kalari didn't touch casually. Elias had read that in the cultural briefings. Varel led the delegation through the city to the diplomatic chambers. The buildings were made of polished stone and glass that caught the light in strange, beautiful ways. Elias kept his tone professional during the talks, but he couldn't help noticing Varel's quiet strength. She spoke little, but when she did, others listened. Over the next few days, the humans and Kailari worked together on peace agreements, trade routes, and cultural exchange programs. Elias had been on many missions like this before, but something about this one felt different. It wasn't just the stakes. It was her. In the evenings, Elias would return to his quarters and read Kailari history. He wanted to understand them better. They were a race of logic and tradition, but he could see there was more beneath the surface. He often wondered what Varel truly thought during those long meetings. Did she see humans as equals, as threats, or something else? One night, after a long negotiation session, Varel approached him on the garden terrace where he often went to clear his mind. The garden was full of tall silver trees that gave off a soft light. Elias was surprised to see her there. "You enjoy solitude," she said. Not as a question, but as an observation. "Sometimes it's the only way to think clearly," Elias replied. Varel walked to the edge of the terrace and looked out at the city lights. "Your people are unusual. You speak of peace but move with fire. You show emotion openly, without shame." "Is that a bad thing?" Elias asked. "It is different," she said. "Kailari are taught to control what we feel. Emotion clouds judgment." "Maybe. Or maybe emotion reminds us why we make the choices we do," Elias said. "Peace isn't just rules on paper. It's about understanding each other." Varel was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You think we can truly understand each other?" "I think we have to try," Elias replied, looking at her. For the first time, Varel smiled. Just a small one, barely there. But it was enough to surprise him. "I do not smile often," she said, as if reading his thoughts. "But perhaps your kind inspires such things." Before Elias could respond, she turned and left, her robe flowing behind her like a silver wave. He watched her go, heart beating a little faster than before. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about her words, her smile, and the strange feeling growing in his chest. He had come here for peace, but something else had begun, something he hadn't expected, and he wasn't sure if it was a problem or the beginning of something wonderful. The next morning, the sun rose gently over Zelvona. Its soft golden light touched the sharp towers of Luran's Reach. Inside the Earth Embassy, Captain Elias Mercer read a new message on his data tablet. The Kalari High Council had approved a joint mission, humans and Kalari working together to help a colony suffering from a food shortage and a strange illness. The colony, called Naravi Outpost, was located on a nearby moon. It was home to both Kalari settlers and a small group of human scientists. Supplies had stopped arriving weeks ago, and their crops were failing. Even worse, a sickness had spread among the people. No one knew where it came from. Elias was assigned to lead the human team. To his surprise, Ambassador Varel was appointed to join him. When he met her on the landing pad, she was already waiting, standing beside a sleek Kalari shuttle. Her silver robe moved slightly in the wind. "You're coming with us?" Elias asked. "Yes," Varel replied. "The High Council believes my presence will help maintain calm among the Kalari settlers. I believe it may also help me understand your people better." Elias smiled. "I'll take that as a compliment." The journey to Naravi was quiet. Inside the shuttle, Elias tried to start a conversation. "I read more about your art last night," he said. "Your people paint with light and sound instead of color." "That is correct," Varel answered. "We believe beauty is found in balance and harmony, not in chaos." Elias thought for a moment. "What do you think of human art?" "Some of it is messy, emotional, even loud." Varel turned her head slightly, curious. "It is confusing, yet there is a strange strength in it. Your people do not fear what you feel. You turn pain into music, sorrow into color." "We're not always proud of what we feel," Elias said, "but we try to be honest about it." Varel didn't reply, but something in her expression changed, as if she was thinking deeply. When they arrived at Naravi, the outpost was in poor shape. Buildings were cracked, the air was heavy, and the people looked tired. Human doctors and Kalari healers worked side by side, trying to help the sick. The illness wasn't deadly, but it weakened people, made them dizzy and confused their minds. Elias quickly began organizing supply drops, clean water systems, and medical support. Varel met with local Kalari leaders, calming their fears and helping restore order. In the evenings, Elias and Varel walked through the outpost, checking on families and offering help. Slowly, the two began to understand each other better. One evening, after helping set up a food station, Elias sat on a bench near the edge of the camp. Varel joined him, sitting in silence for a moment. "You speak to the children with such kindness," she said quietly. "They've been through a lot. A gentle voice can mean more than food sometimes," Elias replied. "In my culture," Varel said, "we are taught to hide emotion. Even from our families, emotion is seen as weakness." Elias looked at her. "And what do you think?" Varel didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I'm not sure anymore. Watching you, seeing your people comfort strangers, show joy, cry without shame, it makes me wonder if we've lost something." Elias smiled gently. "We're not perfect. Sometimes our emotions cause problems, but they also help us connect." Varel turned her eyes toward the sky. The stars were just beginning to show. "When I was young," she said softly, "I asked my mentor why we do not say, 'I love you' in our language. He told me that love is too unstable. It changes, it fades. So we do not give it words." Elias was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Maybe that's true. Love can change. But sometimes it grows." Varel looked at him, her golden eyes, deep in thought. "You speak of love as if it is a strength." "It is," Elias said. "It's what drives us to protect others, to build, to sacrifice. It's messy, yes, but powerful." Varel stood slowly. You are strange, Captain Mercer, but I do not find it unpleasant. He laughed softly. I'll take that as a compliment, too. That night, Varel returned to her quarters and stood alone by the window, watching the moonlight spread across the dusty ground. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel certain about her beliefs. There was a quiet ache inside her chest, a new feeling. She placed a hand over her heart, unsure what it meant. Far across the outpost, Elias lay awake, thinking about her. They were from two different worlds, but something between them had begun to grow, and neither of them knew where it would lead. The sun was low over the horizon on the dusty moon of Naravi. The outpost still buzzed with activity as humans and Kalari worked side by side to care for the sick and fix broken machines. Days had passed since Captain Elias Mercer and Ambassador Varel arrived, and slowly things were improving. The sickness was spreading less now. Food and water were being shared fairly. But danger, it seemed, was never far in space. One quiet afternoon, while Elias and Varel were inspecting a water purifier on the edge of the colony, a loud alarm echoed across the camp. Warning. Unknown ships approaching. All staff, prepare for shelter. Elias looked up. In the sky, 3 dark ships were coming in fast. They were not from the Earth Union. And they weren't Kailari. Pirates, Elias said under his breath. The colony had little to offer, no weapons, few guards. It was a perfect target. Ambassador, we need to get to the control center now, he said firmly. Varel nodded, her voice steady. Agreed. We must protect the people first. As they ran through the colony, people scattered. Some rushed into underground shelters. Others froze, unsure of what to do. The pirate ships landed just beyond the camp, and armed raiders began to spread out. They were tall, covered in armor, and didn't speak. They fired warning shots into the air, making their message clear. They wanted supplies, medicine, and control. Elias took cover behind a wall and looked at Varel. We can't fight them with weapons we don't have, but maybe we can outsmart them. I will distract them, Varel said calmly. What? No, that's too dangerous, Elias replied. They will listen to a Kailari, at least for a few moments. That may give you time to act. Elias hesitated, then nodded. Be careful. Varel stepped out into the open, her hands raised, her voice loud and strong. I am Ambassador Varel of the Kailari High Council. This colony is under our protection. If you harm anyone here, you will answer to both the Kailari and the Earth Union. The pirates paused. One of them, the leader perhaps, stepped forward. His helmet hid his face, but his voice was deep and cold. We're not here to talk, he said. Step aside. But Varel did not move. Behind the wall, Elias used the moment to slip around the side of the camp and reach a communication tower. He worked quickly, trying to send a distress signal to a nearby Earth ship. The old system sparked and whined, but finally the signal was sent. Back in the open, one of the pirates pushed Varel roughly to the ground. That was enough for Elias. He ran forward, grabbing a nearby stun rod from a supply crate. As the pirate turned, Elias struck him with full force. The rod crackled, and the pirate dropped. The others rushed toward him, but just then, light streaked across the sky. 2 Earth Union patrol ships arrived, weapons armed and ready. The pirates didn't wait. They retreated quickly, running back to their ships and lifting off. Within minutes, they were gone. Silence fell over the camp. Elias dropped the stun rod and ran to Varel, helping her up. Are you all right? She nodded slowly. Yes. You risked your life for me. So did you, Elias replied, smiling slightly. They stood close, the tension of the moment still in the air. Around them, the colonists began cheering, thankful they were safe. Later that night, after the patrol ships had landed and the colony was calm again, Elias and Varel sat by a fire in the center of the camp. People brought food and warm drinks. It felt like a small celebration after the storm. Varel watched the flames quietly. I felt something today, she said softly. When they pushed me to the ground, I thought of you. Elias looked at her, unsure what to say. I do not understand it yet, she continued. But it was not fear. It wasn't something else. A need to protect you, to be near you. It is not logical, but it felt real. Elias's voice was gentle. That's what humans call emotion. Sometimes it doesn't follow logic. But that doesn't make it wrong. Varel met his eyes. I was taught that feelings make us weak. But today they made me strong. Elias reached out but stopped himself just before touching her hand. May I? She nodded slowly. Their fingers touched, lightly, but with meaning. For Kailari, it was more than a handshake. It was a sign of deep trust. In that moment, something changed between them. They had faced danger, trusted each other, and now shared something quiet but powerful. As the fire crackled beside them and the stars shone above, Elias knew one thing for certain. This was no longer just a mission. It was the beginning of something more. Days passed on Naravi after the pirate attack. The colony had returned to normal, but the air still held the memory of fear. And something else. Something new. Captain Elias Mercer noticed it every time he walked beside Ambassador Varel. Their conversations were longer now. Their silences were softer. Every moment they shared carried more weight. Varel too felt it. She had always believed emotions were dangerous, a storm that should be controlled. But with Elias, that belief had started to change. She began to wonder, what if emotions didn't weaken her? What if they made her human, or something more? One morning, as the sun rose over the dusty hills, Elias invited Varel to visit a small observation tower on the far edge of the outpost. It's quiet out there, he said. You can see the stars even during the day. Varel agreed. They rode out in a small Land Rover, the bumpy path shaking them gently. The tower stood alone, a simple metal structure built by early settlers. Its roof open to the sky, and solar. Panels powered a telescope and radio. Inside, the air was cooler. A few chairs sat near the window. Elias opened the hatch, letting the sunlight fall in. I used to come here when I needed to think, he said. Varel looked through the telescope. The view is clear. I can see 3 moons. He smiled. Sometimes I forget how much beauty there is even on a place like this. They sat down. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Varel asked, why did you become a captain? Elias leaned back. When I was young, I wanted to see other worlds. I thought space would be full of wonder, and it is. But I also saw conflict, fear, loneliness. That's when I knew I wanted to do more than explore. I wanted to help people. Build peace. Varel nodded slowly. You have done that here. Elias turned toward her. What about you? Why diplomacy? She paused. In my youth, I believed in order and honor. I thought if I followed the rules, I would find truth. But the galaxy isn't always logical. Now I see that peace isn't made through rules alone. It's made by understanding, and sometimes by listening to the heart. Elias looked at her, carefully. Are you listening to yours now? Varel met his eyes. Her voice was quiet, but steady. I think so. It is not easy. He smiled gently. It never is. There was a long silence. Not an awkward one, but a deep, thoughtful one. The kind that comes when 2 people are trying to understand something they've never said out loud. Then, slowly, Elias spoke. Varel, I need to tell you something. It's been growing inside me since the day we met. She turned to him, her expression unreadable but calm. I admire you, not just as a leader or diplomat, but as a person. You're strong, honest, and thoughtful. I've seen the way you care even when you try to hide it, and I've come to care for you deeply. The words hung in the air. Varel didn't move. For a moment she said nothing. Then in a quiet voice she answered, This feeling, we do not have a word for it in my language, but I believe I understand yours. She looked down at her hands. I was not prepared for this. I did not come here to feel connection. But you do feel it? Elias asked, his voice gentle. Yes, she said, lifting her eyes. I do. Though it frightens me. It frightens me too, he admitted. Varel stood and walked to the window. If I return to my people and they learn of this bond, they may question my judgment. They may call me distracted. Would they be wrong? Elias asked carefully. She turned to him. No, they would be right, because when I think of you, my thoughts are no longer calm. But I no longer see that as a weakness. Elias stood, moving closer. Then what do you see it as? She looked up at him. Something rare, something worth protecting. Their eyes met, and for the first time they both understood. They came from different worlds, different cultures, even different ways of thinking. But something had brought them together. And it was real. Varel reached out, gently touching his hand, a gesture that in Kalari tradition meant trust and deep connection. Elias held her fingers softly. In that quiet tower, under the stars and sun, a human and an alien stood side by side, not as diplomats or leaders, but as something more, something new. And though they still had many challenges ahead, one truth was now clear. Love, even across the stars, finds a way. The next morning, the air on Naravi was cooler than usual. A light wind moved through the colony, and people went about their work with more hope than before. The sickness was almost gone now, and the last of the supply problems were being solved. Things were looking better. But deep inside, Captain Elias Mercer felt uneasy. It wasn't just because of what had happened with the pirates. It wasn't just about the colony either. It was because of Varel. Not because she had done anything wrong, but because something between them had changed. They had grown close. They had shared thoughts, fears, and something like love. But now, Elias wondered what would happen next. He stood outside the command tent looking at the sky when a voice called his name. Captain Mercer, a message just came through, from the Earth Union. Elias walked inside quickly. A young officer handed him the data tablet. He read the message carefully. It was short, but important. Urgent. Kalari High Council concerned about Ambassador Varel's emotional involvement with Earth officer. They request an immediate update on the situation. Earth Union seeks clarity. Report soon. Elias lowered the tablet, his jaw tight. Someone had reported them. Perhaps it was someone in the colony, or maybe someone back on Kalari Prime, who had noticed a change in Varel's behavior. Either way, both governments were watching now. Then Varel entered the tent. She had received the same message. Her face was calm, but her voice was low. They know. Elias nodded. I figured it wouldn't stay secret forever. Varel looked at him. They are afraid, not of me and not of you, but of change. He stepped closer. Do you regret it? She was quiet for a long time. No, she finally said. But I fear what it may cost. Later that day, the High Council sent a private message to Varel. She stood alone when she read it. It asked her to return to the capital for a formal discussion. No charges, no punishment. But the message was clear. They wanted answers. Meanwhile, Elias received orders from his own command. They asked him to remain on Naravi until further notice, but avoid personal involvement with the ambassador. Everything they had built together, peace, trust, even love, was now under question. That night, Elias walked to the observation tower alone. The stars above were clear and still, but his thoughts were stormy. He sat down and stared at the sky, wondering if this was the end of something before it could truly begin. A soft sound came from the doorway. Varel had followed him. I thought I might find you here, she said. He smiled faintly. It's quiet here, helps me think. She walked over and sat beside him. I leave tomorrow, she said. He looked at her sharply. So soon? They want to speak with me directly. I must go. Elias looked down. And what happens after that? I do not know, she admitted. They may remove me from duty. They may not allow me to return. Silence fell between them. The wind outside whispered softly through the metal tower. Elias finally spoke. "I don't care what they say. I meant what I told you. I don't want to forget what we have." Virel nodded slowly. "I will remember it always, even if I never return." Elias reached into his jacket and pulled out a small silver pendant. It was shaped like a star, something he had worn since his first mission into space. "This was given to me by my sister," he said, "before I left Earth. She told me it would bring me home." He placed it in Virel's hand. "I want you to have it, so even if you're far away, you'll know you're not alone." Virel held the pendant gently. Her eyes shone with something soft and warm. "I will keep it close." They stood together at the top of the tower, looking out into the night. The stars above them seemed closer than ever before. And though the future was unclear and their path uncertain, one thing remained true. What they had found in each other was real. The next morning, a Kailari shuttle arrived to take Virel back to the capital. The colonists gathered to thank her. Elias stood near the landing pad, watching her step into the shuttle. Before the door closed, she looked back at him one last time. Not a goodbye, but a promise. Then the shuttle rose into the sky and vanished into the clouds. Elias stood there for a long time, the pendant chain still cold in his hand. He didn't know what would come next, but he knew he would wait. It had been 2 weeks since Virel left Naravi. Captain Elias Mercer still woke up early each day, walked through the colony, and made sure everything was running smoothly. The sickness was gone now. Supplies were full. The colonists were safer and more hopeful than ever before. But Elias didn't feel peace. He felt empty. Every place in the colony reminded him of her, the fire pit where they shared tea, the old tower where they had talked about the stars, and even the quiet evenings when her presence had brought calm to the whole outpost. Each day he checked the communication panel in his office, hoping for a message. None came. Until one quiet morning, when a soft beep broke the silence. Incoming message. Private. Source. Kailari High Council Elias sat up straight. He opened the file quickly. It wasn't from Virel. It was from a Kailari representative. Ambassador Virel has been temporarily removed from her post while the council considers her future role. She has not been permitted to send personal messages. Any attempt to contact her will be logged. We advise your cooperation for peace between our species. Elias stared at the message, heart sinking. They had cut her off, isolated her. Even worse, they had done it in the name of peace. He clenched his jaw. "They're afraid of change," he whispered to himself. "Afraid of something they don't understand." Later that day, Elias walked to the hilltop outside the colony. He stood alone, looking at the distant sky, and thought of her. That evening, he called a meeting with his officers. "I need a favor," he told them. "It's personal, and it might be risky." They listened in silence as he explained. Back, on Kailari Prime, inside the capital's great crystal tower, Virel sat alone in a silver room. It was quiet, too quiet. The council had questioned her for hours earlier that week, asking about her emotions, her connection with the human captain, and whether her decisions had been influenced. She had answered truthfully. "I did what I believed was right," she had said. Not because of emotion, but because it saved lives. Still, the council had doubts. Now she was kept in the diplomatic chamber, watched by guards, unable to leave or send messages. She held the small silver pendant in her hand, the star Elias had given her. She kept it close, hiding it in her robe, drawing strength from it each day. "I will not forget you," she whispered to the pendant, even though she didn't know if he could hear her. That night, a quiet alarm went off in the tower. A Kailari officer stepped into her room. "There's an incident at the northern gate," he said. "Please stay inside." Virel's heart raced. She walked to the window and looked out. A human ship was landing. Not just any ship. Earth Union colors. Military class. Her breath caught. Was it him? Down below, Elias stepped out of the ship, holding his hands up in peace. Around him, Kailari guards aimed their weapons, unsure whether to treat him as a threat or a visitor. "I come in peace," Elias said. "I ask only to speak with Ambassador Varel. Nothing more." The guards hesitated. Then one of them contacted the council. Inside the Eindo chamber, Varel turned to the officer. "Let me go, please." "No one is allowed out," he said firmly, but Varel no longer cared for rules that ignored truth. She stepped forward. "I will not be silent any longer. I am not a prisoner. I am an ambassador." The officer blocked her path. In one swift motion, she activated the emergency override on the wall, a feature she had helped design during peaceful negotiations. The door slid open. Varel stepped out into the hall and walked with purpose through the tower, her robe flowing behind her. Kailari diplomats turned in surprise as she passed. At the gate, Elias waited, his eyes searching. Then, he saw her, and she saw him. Neither of them spoke at first. Then Varel walked up to him. Her voice was calm, but full of power. "You should not have come." "I had to," Elias replied. "They wouldn't let you speak. I couldn't stay silent." She looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly, she smiled. Behind them, Kailari council members began to arrive. Tension filled the air. The guards watched carefully. One elder stepped forward. "Captain Mercer, you are trespassing. This is highly unusual." Elias turned to him. "Sometimes peace needs more than silence and rules. It needs courage." Varel stepped beside him. "And truth." The elder stared at them both, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded once. "Come inside," he said. "We will talk." As the guards lowered their weapons and the two stood side by side once more, Elias felt something he hadn't in weeks. Hope. The council chamber was silent. Elias and Varel stood side by side, facing the full Kailari High Council. The tall crystal walls of the room glowed with soft blue light, and the councilors sat on curved seats, their expressions calm but serious. Varel spoke first. "I broke no law. I followed my duty. I negotiated peace, protected lives, and stood for truth. If I also found something unexpected, something personal, it did not change my loyalty." Elias stepped forward. "I did not come here to cause trouble. I came to speak honestly, because hiding what we feel doesn't make things safer. It makes them colder, and peace is not cold, it's living. It's built on trust, and that trust must be real." A few council members exchanged quiet glances. One of them, Elder Severin, spoke in a calm voice. "Ambassador Varel, you were respected for your control, your reason. But now, some see your heart as a weakness." Varel looked him in the eye. "Then they do not understand strength." She paused, her voice growing stronger. "It is easy to follow rules when nothing challenges you, but true strength is choosing what's right when emotions are involved, when the path is not clear. I chose peace, and I would choose it again." Another counselor leaned forward. "And your connection with this human captain?" Varel glanced at Elias. "It was not planned, but it is real, and it has taught me more about unity than any treaty ever has." The room grew quiet again. Then, to everyone's surprise, another Kailari elder, older and more reserved, stood up. "In our ancient history," he said slowly, "our people believed that unity was dangerous, that to share emotions with outsiders would weaken us. But perhaps we were wrong." He looked around the room. "Perhaps we are strong enough now to grow, to listen, to accept that peace is not only written in words, but felt in the heart." Several counselors nodded. Elias held his breath. Then Elder Severin spoke again. "Ambassador, Varel, you may return to your position, but with a new title, Senior Ambassador of Interworld Relations. You will be free to build connections with Earth, including personal ones." Varel blinked, surprised. Elias smiled. The counselor continued. "Captain Mercer, Earth Union will be contacted. If they support this new step in diplomacy, you will work beside her as an official Earth representative. Elias nodded firmly. They will support it. The meeting ended not with loud applause but with respectful silence, a sign of great honor in Kalari culture. As they walked out of the chamber, the sun was setting across the silver towers of the city. Varel looked at Elias, her voice soft. I didn't think this day would come. He took her hand gently. Neither did I. But I never gave up hope. They stood together on the balcony, watching the twin moons rise. Below them, the city lights began to glow. A new message came in from Earth Union confirming Elias's new role. He would stay, officially, not just as a visitor, but as a bridge between two worlds. A few days later, they returned to Naravi together. The colonists welcomed them with smiles and cheers. Children ran through the camp and people brought out lights and music. It felt like a festival. Varel spoke to the colonists, thanking them for their courage and their patience. Elias gave a short speech too, but mostly, he just thanked everyone for believing in peace. That night they walked back to the observation tower, the place where they had once shared their feelings for the first time. The stars were clear again. A soft breeze moved through the air. Varel looked up. Do you still believe in something greater out there? Elias nodded. I do. But I think the greatest thing I've found so far is right here. She smiled. He took out the pendant, the star-shaped one he had given her, and gently placed it around her neck again. Now it's home, she whispered. They stood together in the quiet, hand in hand under the stars, different species, different worlds. But something new had begun. Not just between them, but between all their people. Because one brave confession had led to something greater than anyone expected. Not war, not fear, but understanding. And in that understanding, they found something rare and beautiful. Hope.